Hello everyone, and welcome to Victoria's Cantina, where today we're having a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nations S.H Figuarts Star Wars Chewbacca 6-inch scale action figure. So I picked this one up on my recent trip to Japan at Big Camera, and it was the one and only time that I saw this while in Japan, and it seems like it's been out of stock online from the Japanese stores that I usually order from. So it seems to be either a pretty popular character or one that has been produced in smaller numbers. I'm really not sure, but I do know it is very nice to have Chewbacca in the 6-inch scale S.H Figuarts line. As you can see here, Big Camera, for whatever reason, they surround the figure in all of this plastic wrapping. I'm going to go ahead and remove that real quick, and that way we can get maybe a somewhat better look at the figure. But before I do that, you do have the price right there. It was 5,400 yen, which is somewhere just under $50 or so. So really not that bad of a deal for this figure in particular. And there you go. You can kind of see it a little bit better now. And the box is the same S.H Figuarts style that Figuarts has been doing from the beginning, basically. You can see the figure in there pretty well. Although, like I said, there is a lot of plastic going on, even with that plastic wrapping removed. So it is a little hard to see the figure, but in person you can see it a little bit better. There's the bottom. Lots of Japanese writing. And although I did spend 15 days in Japan, I don't really know much of the language at all. Just a few basic words and phrases, things like that. And there's Chewbacca right there. And the figure does look really good. It looks very detailed. There's a look there at him with the Han Solo figure that we did a review previously. And more poses there of everyone's favorite Wookiee. There he is on the side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit of time, get Chewie unboxed. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at the S.H Figuarts Chewbacca. And I'm doing my review while I am consuming this Pepsi Fire. Have you guys ever had this? It's available temporarily for the summer, I think. It's not that good. Stay away from this. It's basically like a Fireball. If you ever had a Fireball, it tastes very much like a Pepsi mixed with Fireball without the alcohol. So stay away from it. Not that great. Anyway, here is Chewbacca right here out of the packaging. And he looks really, really good. Lots of sculpted goodness there, lots of nice paint detail, lots of articulation. We're going to get into all that. But just looking at the figure, I think he looks really, really good. I'm very pleased with what I am seeing here. The proportions look good no matter what angle you look at this figure at. He seems quite screen accurate, and that makes me very happy to see. It's also nice to be adding another A New Hope based figure to the Figuarts collection. They've been kind of on a roll getting figures from that film pumped out, even though it's taken some time. We got C-3PO and R2-D2 coming very soon. We got Ben Kenobi possibly coming pretty soon. There have been some photos online. But I'm really pulling for Princess Leia more than any of those other figures. So come on, Bandai, throw us a bone, give us Princess Leia. Let's take an up-close look at Chewbacca. So when you first set eyes on him up close, and that's not a pun, the eyes actually look a little bit off. And I think that's actually pretty accurate to the film. If you go back and look at A New Hope, you look at Chewbacca, the eyes weren't off or anything like that, but the thing is that Peter Mayhew, his eyes sit a little bit closer to the bridge of Chewbacca's nose. At least the irises of the eyes do. So it kind of gives this sort of illusion that the eyes are a little bit off, when in fact, they're not really off. It's still correct. Does that make sense? Maybe, maybe not. But it looks really good. It looks really good. When you look at it from the side, I mean, that's totally Chewbacca from the original Star Wars film. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous looking head sculpt. And I love everything that I'm seeing. I mean, the texturing that they implemented into the sculpt. Now, it does look a little bit weird from the side when you notice that line right there. That's for the removable head, which we'll look at that in just a little bit. But you do have that there. And obviously, it would have looked better if they just included a totally removable, interchangeable head rather than just the faceplate. But it is what it is. It looks a little weird from the back, I gotta admit, especially when you see that line right there. Yeah, that is a little bit strange. I'm not really sure yet why that is there. We'll look at that. But from a pure sculpting standpoint, I think that it looks really, really good. Especially the coloring. It just looks very correct to me. Eyes themselves look pretty nice. You can see that they look pretty lifelike. Even though they do look a little bit weird, like I was saying. And keep in mind, I did select the best paint job. When I was at Big Camera in Tokyo, they had several to choose from at this particular store, and I got what I felt was the best one overall. So it looks good. It looks good. Maybe imperfect, but it looks good. And I just love all of this coloring and shading that they opted to go with around the face. It doesn't look waxy. It doesn't look shiny. You have all of that very nice coloration, like the browns there on the sides of his upper lip. The nose looks very nice. Going down the body, you can see his bandolier and the rest of his shaggy fur adorning his body. And again, it's all sculpted beautifully. It all looks truly, truly fantastic. And gotta say, it looks very nice. So you do see all of those joints. You see the cuts there where those joints exist. And down here, it does look a little bit funny because it's not too seamless. But being a Figuarts figure, I mean, you're going to have all of that articulation. There's not really a 100% way to get around that. It's expected, it's understandable, and it is what it is. So the pouch down here on the bottom of the bandolier is pretty nice. You got some nice coloring on there. It doesn't look like one color. They did a nice job giving it a little bit of extra shading and detail. You can see that there's some darker colors implemented in there. And the bandolier itself is it's a soft pliable plastic, but it is glued up here at the top of his shoulder. So you're not going to remove that fully, which is fine. He never was without it in any of the films, at least not yet. The legs look very nice. More sculpting here that looks really good. Nice texturing, nice coloring. And the knees do look really, really weird from the back. I'm never going to display this from the back. I mean, not that I normally would anyway, but it just looks weird. I mean, I kind of get why it's like that, sort of, but yeah, it's a little odd. And the feet look really good. I think they actually got the feet, looking just right. Look at that. Very, very cool. And the toenails, all that looks really spectacular. Now, in terms of articulation, you do have a ball joint here at the very top of the head. That's where the head is connected to the joint, and that extends into the neck. So you can rotate it like this. You can go down and up just a little bit, not a whole lot. One thing I do want to point out is, given the nature of the articulation, you do see a little bit of a gap on the side. Depending on how you orient it, you can kind of hide that a little bit, but there is a little bit of a gap there, unfortunately, but it's not a huge deal. And the reasoning that we have that line on the back of the head, as I noted earlier, how it looks kind of weird, well, it actually moves up and down a little bit. That way, if you're moving the head from one side to the other, there's a little bit of give there. And here at the shoulders, there is a cup that goes on the inside of the joint, and you do have your ball hinging, so you can extend the arms outward. You can rotate them. They drop in and out just a little bit. Very nice. You have a swivel here at the bicep. You have your bends here at both of the elbows, and that's a very nice range of movement right there. Here at the hands or wrists, you can rotate them. They go in and out depending on how you have them oriented. Here at the torso, you do have a ball joint right down here, and pretty decent movement to it. Looks like you can flex it down or outward or side to side, so that's pretty nice. Here at the hips, and this is one thing that I just barely noticed. I mentioned earlier how it looked a little bit weird. You can actually move these pieces right there above the hip to kind of cover the empty spaces. So that's very interesting. I mean, it's better that they have that than not. So it is really interesting how those pieces are movable. So you can kind of conceal those gaps just a little bit more, at least. So you do have your hinging here at both of the hips. You can make them do a very nice Wookiee split. And you can orient them forward. And they go up all that much. That's pretty awesome. That's a very good range of movement there. And you also have bends at both of the knees. These are double bends. So that's probably part of the reason it looks like that from the back. But they seem to look pretty good from the front, so that's important too. Here at both of the ankles, you can bend them up and down, you can rotate them, and you can rock them back and forth. So that's quite nice. And then both of the toe joints on both feet are articulated as well. So overall, the articulation seems to function very, very well in this Chewbacca figure. I'm pretty pleased with everything that they integrated here. I think it all works quite well. And other than the somewhat awkward aesthetics from some of these joints, I think for the most part, it's integrated very nicely and the figure functions very well. In terms of accessories, Chewie comes with his alternate head, and like I said, it's more of a faceplate than an actual head, as you can see. And you can see that the eyes look pretty similar to the way they look on the figure. Just with the usual head that it comes with out of the box, the more neutral looking head. This time he's roaring, and pretty nice detail there around the teeth, around the tongue. When I was looking at these at Bit Camera, I did notice that the teeth were painted a little bit differently on each figure. I felt like this was the best one overall, so this is the one that I went with. If we refer to the instructions, it shows you how to swap the faceplate on the figure. So you're going to pull the figure's head off like this, or the front half of his head anyway, and that's very creepy looking. Very creepy looking. And then we're going to go ahead and take the alternate faceplate, and we're just going to position it in place and press down on it like that. Now you have Chewie in more of a roaring sort of look. Out of the box, Chewie comes with his 2 fisted hands, but you also get 2 open hands. And considering how the fur just kind of drapes downward, I guess it's not really meant to have position like that. I mean, it looks natural like this, but just the fur kind of sticking straight out. If you orient it other than that, it looks a little bit weird. You also get Chewie's bowcaster, and this is actually attached to this hand right here. So that's the one gripping hand that's grabbing the handle of the gun, and that simply plugs into his hand the same way you would plug in the other hands. The bowcaster itself looks nice. It's not too big. A lot of the time, like what you see with the Hasbro versions, is that they make them oversized. They make them really large. This one is actually seems to be a little bit more movie accurate, in my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but it seems to be an easier size to deal with and to pose the figure with. It's basically just black. There's a little bit of a metallic flake to it. So, I mean, I guess more than anything else, it's like a really dark charcoal gray. And the little strap right here is kind of like a greenish color. And it looks pretty good. The little buckle on there does have some metallic paint to it right there. So that is pretty nice. And once you get that pegged into Chewie's wrist, it's nice to see him holding his bowcaster. And for the left side, I have the open hand. You could use either the open hand or the fisted hand. Now, as far as the height goes, Chewie here is going to be standing just under 7 inches tall. Here is the S.H. Figuarts Chewbacca, along with the Hasbro Star Wars The Black Series 6-inch scale Chewbacca. As you can see, the Black Series version towers above the Figuarts version, and that's because the Figuarts figures tend to run a little bit smaller, even though they are also 6-inch scale. They are a little bit smaller overall than what Hasbro does with the Black Series, and also compared to what Medicom does with the Mafex figures. It is also pretty universally agreed upon that the Black Series Chewbacca is scaled a little bit too large. It's a little bit too tall for what it should actually be for the 6-inch Black Series line. But in any case, looking at them side by side, you can definitely see the difference here. Now, while I am a fan of the Black Series Chewbacca, I think it's a nice figure overall. You can see that the Figuarts version doesn't have the glossy look to it. That looks a little bit weird for the Black Series. The sculpting is also a little bit more movie accurate, and I feel like the coloration as well looks a little bit closer to what we actually see in the film compared to the Black Series. It's more of this more chocolate icing sort of brown color. Of course, they're both catered toward different audiences, but now that I have the Figuarts version here and I'm comparing it to the Black Series version, I am very happy that I acquired the Figuarts version. Here's a look at the Figuarts Chewbacca along with the S.H. Figuarts Han Solo that we also reviewed earlier this year. And for the most part, I think that they do scale up one to the other pretty well, but Chewie feels a little bit short nonetheless. And that just goes back to one of the bigger drawbacks of the Figuarts line, is that a lot of the time the figures aren't 100% scaled one to the other. You would think that with these releases being so close next to each other, they would have scaled him a little bit better. But again, he is tall enough to resemble film accuracy, even if it's not completely film accurate. It's something I can live with in this case. But of course, I would have preferred the scale to have been a little bit better. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so there you have it. This is the Bandai Tamashii Nations S.H. Figuarts Star Wars Chewbacca. All in all, you guys, I am quite happy with this figure. As we generally see with Figuarts, the sculpting here is top-notch. There's a lot of nice sculpted detail, a lot of nice texturing, and the coloration, it's fantastic. They did a really good job coloring this figure, adding the shading, adding the highlights. He does look very faithful to how he appeared in A New Hope, not just in terms of sculpting, but in terms of color as well. I really like the shade that they went with, and then the darker shades of brown and the other chocolatey tones that are mixed in here. Lots of nice shading, lots of nice detail. The head sculpt I think is really, really good. Like I said, the eyes are a little bit weird looking, but I can kind of understand why that is, as I described at the beginning of the video. Articulation to me here is very, very good. All the joints seem to work very well, even though the aesthetics from the back of the figure in particular are kind of thrown off because of the joints. It functions very, very well, which is very important. The interchangeable faceplate, the interchangeable hands, and the crossbow, all of that is integrated quite nicely. It all works very well. So I'm happy. Yeah, Chewie's maybe a smidgen on the short side, but it isn't a deal breaker. This figure is just fantastic on so many levels. I'm thrilled to have it in my collection, and I can't wait to get it on display with the rest of my S.H. Figuarts figures. Alright my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If so, do give us a like, do subscribe. What do you think of the S.H. Figuarts Chewbacca? Is it something you would add to your collection? Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for the latest updates, and as always, I would like to thank you for tuning in to Victoria's Cantina. Until next time, my friends, bye-bye.